refresh our memory on how to graph a line using x and y intercepts and how to use all this information in different problems. So let's start with, let's say, problem 32. And this is on page 267. And we have negative 3 comma 6. And we have 3 comma negative 2. We are asked to find the equation of the line passing through these points. Find y. I will denote this by x1, y1, and the next ordered pair by x2, y2. So we are asked to find the equation of the line. Okay, what do I have to find first? Do you all agree that we have to find the slope first? Okay, very good. So here's the slope. It is wise to write the definition always y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 before you plug it in. So, correct. Minus 6, awesome, over minus negative 3, which is awesome. We are saving time. So this is negative 8 over 6, and this is negative 4/3. Perfect. Great. Now I'm asking myself, well, I know I have two equations. I can use the easy one, or I can use the more difficult one. But I can use the easy one only if one of the ordered pairs is 0 comma a number. If it isn't, then I have to use this one. Do I have 0 comma a number? No. So I don't. So I'm going to use this one. I am going to write it. Y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. I know I will replace the slope by negative 4/3. And now I have to make a decision which point to use. If you use point 1 and I use the second one, we'll still get the same answer, no matter what. So which one do you want to use? You want to use negative 3, 6? Then we put negative 3 and 6. The reason why I prepared the information I presented under the equation is because I don't want to write parentheses and parentheses and parentheses. So now I see exactly what I need to write next. It's y minus 6 equals negative 4/3, x minus negative 3, but that will be x plus 3. Otherwise, I would have written x minus parentheses negative 3 instead of just writing it without parentheses. Of course, I have to solve for y. The problem is asking me to solve for y. I will have to do what first? Distribute and then add 6. So negative 4/3 x, and now I have to multiply negative 4 over 3 by 3 over 1. Negative 4 over 3 by 3 over 1. Always simplify first before you multiply. Indeed, negative 4 and then plus 6. So then I get y equals negative 4/3 x and plus 2. One more time, what does this represent? What does y equals negative 4/3 x plus 2 represent? The equation of the line passing through the given points or ordered pairs, correct? Yes? Very good. Any questions on this type of problem? Do we remember this from our past experience with math? Yes? Okay, very good. Let's graph a linear equation. Let's say 62 on page 267. 4x plus 6y plus 12 equals 0. We're asked to graph using x and y intercepts. Graph using x and y intercepts. Graph using x and y intercepts. I know you're used to graphing using the slope. You will probably go ahead and find y and find the slope. No, none of that is required really. And what I tell my students always is this. This line is the only one that you can use the slope to graph. There is no other function on the planet that you can use the slope to graph. So move away from it. Because what is important is x-intercept, and what else is important is the y-intercept, not graphing with the slope. The slope method is good. Why and when? When you have a line and you want to determine its slope, and you have the graph. Otherwise, it's not useful at all. So let me ask you this before we graph this equation using x and y intercepts. Let's suppose I have something like this. How do we call this point? Do you all agree with y-intercept? Now, what do I know about this line? So I want you to understand the difference between this line, which gives us the position, where, and this line that gives us the altitude, what or how much. So since this is a position, the equation of the position cannot be y. It has to be something with x alone. When I talk about altitude, it has nothing to do with x. It has to be a y equals situation. So position, x equals. Altitude, y equals. So what is the equation of this line? Perfect. So every time I find the y-intercept, what do I have to set? X equals 0. Now this point, can anyone tell us what is this point? This is the x-intercept. So what is the equation of this line? Correct. So every time I want to determine the x-intercept, what do I have to set? Y equal to 0. So let's say we make x equal to 0. So here's what I do. Don't touch the equation, don't solve, don't do anything to it. X is 0. This term is gone. Can you determine y from here? Don't rush. Remember, you have to move 12 to the other side. It becomes negative, and you have to divide by 6. Do you all agree with y equals -2? So what is the ordered pair that we just determined? Very good. And that will be a y-intercept. Now I need to make y equals 0. Imagine that you have to put 12 to the other side and divide by 4. X equals -3. So what is the other ordered pair, which will be the x-intercept, -3, 0. Now I'm ready to graph. This is way more useful. Every function that we are going to look moving forward, we will have to determine the x and y intercepts if they exist for each of it. So -3, 0 and 0, -2. I connect and extend the line. I must write the equation somewhere near the graph, above, below, left, right, whatever you decide, but it has to be there. So this is how we graph a linear equation using x and y intercepts. Any questions? Any questions for me? Any questions? I suddenly thought I ran out of paper. Okay, so let's look at a couple of problems with parallel and perpendicular lines. Let's say problem 5 on page 279. We are given a point and we are told, find the equation of a line passing through this point and parallel, this is the sign for parallel, to the line whose equation is y equals -4x plus 3. So we're asked to find the equation of the line. This is the line. I'm not graphing anything exactly. I'm just giving you the setup. So we're asked to find the equation of this line, and we have two pieces of information. One piece of information is that this line passes through this point, which is -8, -10. The second piece of information is that this line is parallel to the line whose equation is -4x, y equals -4x plus 3. Is there any way I can determine this? So would you agree that the slope is given to us indirectly? So how do I read the slope from this line? I compare it to the slope-intercept form, and I realize that the number in front of x must be the slope of the given line. So the slope of the given line is, since these two lines are parallel, can I assume that this slope is also -4?
Yes.
Because they are parallel. Perfect. So now I'm asking myself the next question. Is this ordered pair 0, a number?
No.
So since it's not 0, a number, I will not be able to use the mx plus b, y equals mx plus b. So then I have to go back to y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1, in which the slope is -4, x1 is -8, and y1 is -10. I wrote those numbers underneath because it's easier instead of writing it again with parentheses. It's up to you. I accept any method. So then what will you tell me to write? But it's minus minus. That's why I wrote it like that. Right. So then I don't have to put too many parentheses. And then I have x minus -8. I have to solve for y. I will distribute -4 and then I will subtract 10. So then y equals -4x minus 32 and minus 10. What will this represent? After I completely simplify it into y equals -4x minus 42. What does this represent? It represents the equation of the line passing through and parallel to. Any questions? Does it make sense? We're going to choose another problem in a minute. Does it make sense? Okay, let's look at one with perpendicular. Let's say 11. Same page, 279. We are given a point which is 4, -7, and we are told that the equation passes through 4, -7 and is perpendicular to the line whose equation is x minus 2y minus 3 equals 0. So here's the scenario. Just the idea, nothing exact. I'm not graphing anything exact. So here is an equation I would like to determine. And I know two things about this line. It passes to the point 4, -7 and is perpendicular for 90-degree angles on the equation, on the line whose equation is this. Very similar to the previous case. However, I'm asking myself, is this the 0, a number? Is this the y-intercept? Is this 0, a number? No. So I have to think of y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1, in which x1 is 4 and y1 is -7. But I am missing a big or important piece of the puzzle. What am I missing? I'm missing the slope. Well, I do know that these two lines are perpendicular. If I manage to determine the slope of the second line, maybe I will be able to determine the slope of the first line. But what should I do to the given equation, x minus 2y minus 3 equals 0, in order to determine the slope? Because this time I cannot read as easy as I was able to here. Here the equation was solved for y, and it was very easy to identify the slope. But this equation is not solved for y. It's not set up into the form y equals mx plus b, at least not yet. What should I do first to this equation to determine the slope of the second line? So what I would do, I will solve for y. I will put it in this format, and then I will be able to identify the slope. But how do I do this? I will have to solve for, exactly, I have to solve for y, presented as y equals mx plus b. Yes?
When you have it in that form, isn't b the y-intercept?
In this form? Yes, the y-intercept is 0, 3. Not in this case. No, not at all. I cannot identify anything here before I solve for y. So, let's solve for y. Please tell me what will be the first step.
Subtract x from both sides.
Good. So negative 2y will be negative x plus 3. So you wanted to move x and to move negative 3. Very good.
And then divide by negative 2.
Very good. But please be very careful how you divide by negative 2. You cannot write this. This will not work. Individually, step by step, term by term, yes. So negative 2y equals negative x plus 3. When I divide negative 2y by negative 2, I get y. Careful how we divide here. Negative 1 by negative 2, which is 1/2, and x outside. 3 divided by negative 2, and this is negative 3/2. From this equation, since you asked, it's a very good question. Can you identify the y-intercept of this? Not that we need it now, but I just want to identify it. Do you all agree with 0, negative 3/2? So therefore, we could not conclude anything in this step. At this step, I have to present it as y equals mx plus b in order to identify the slope and identify the y-intercept. What is the slope now? Very good. The slope is 1/2. So m2 is 1/2. What about m1 that I'm really interested in? I don't really care about m2, but I needed to determine m2 so that I can find m1. But negative, because the product has to be negative 1. Agreed? So this must be negative 2. If one slope is 1/2, the other one must be negative 2. Agreed? So then I put in negative 2, and now the problem is almost done, almost solved. So I will write it one more time as y plus 7 equals negative 2 times x minus 4. So y equals negative 2x plus 8 and minus 7, or y equals negative 2x plus 1. You are going to encounter problems like these in my math lab. So I want you to have references. So what does this represent?
The equation for the line that's perpendicular.
Yes, it's the equation of the line that is perpendicular to the given equation, to the line whose given equation is this, and passing through 4, negative 7. One last thing here in this section, and then we can stop unless we have another couple of minutes to do another problem, is about the average rate of change. Let's look at the function, and then I will give you an example with the average rate of change. So let's say we have this function. I have point A here, and I have point B here. I will connect them with a line segment. And now I will create this point, and I'll say this is x1. This is function f of x. This is x1, and I would like you to give me the y coordinate of A. Thank you very much. This is very important. Yes. What about this being x2? What will this be? Good. So the coordinates of B are x2 comma f of x2. The coordinates of A are x1 comma f of x1. The slope of the line AB is the average rate of change between A and B, of course. Can anyone give us the slope of this line? Very good. This is the average rate of change. What does this mean? What does this mean? So imagine that one day I decide to go and visit a dear friend of mine in New York. She and I grew up together. She's about 3 years older than I am. So I get in my car. About an hour later, let's say, an hour and a half, whatever you want, you call me on my cell phone and you ask me, where are you? And I said, I have no idea. On the road somewhere between Baltimore and New York. And you're going to say, okay, look at the odometer and tell me your speed right now. So I look at my odometer and I'll say 61 miles per hour. That's the instantaneous velocity. You called me, I looked at the odometer, I told you 61 miles per hour at that instant. But then you say to me, okay, you came back. I would like you to tell me what was your average speed between Wilmington, Delaware, and Philadelphia. What will I do? I will measure the distance between Wilmington and Philadelphia. I will use this as the difference. That's the distance that I covered. And then I will look at the time I'm passing by Wilmington and the time I'm passing by Philadelphia. That is the time that I needed to cover the distance between Wilmington and Philadelphia. I will divide by that time, and then I will say the average rate of the average velocity or rate of change of distance with respect to time was 59. So this is what we're trying to determine here, the average rate of change of this function between 2 points. And here's an example. Let's say problem 16 on page 279. And we are given f of x, which is x squared minus 2x. We are given x1 equals 3 and x2 equals 6. So they're asking us to find the average rate of change for this particular function between the two given points. But we're not given the points, we're only given the x values. So the average rate of change between 3 and 6. Okay, the denominator is very clear. It's x2 minus x1, 6 minus 3. But now what do I do with the numerator? How do I determine the numerator of this average rate of change? Very good. So then I will have to identify and determine f of x1. I will have to determine f of x2. In this case will be f of 3. In this case will be f of 6. Without these two numbers, I cannot finish my work. So when I plug in 3, what do I get? Let's plug in 3 in the function and you give me the answer. When I plug in 3, I get 9 minus 6, that's correct. 9, 3 squared is 9, minus 2 times 3 is 6. 9 minus 6 is indeed 3. Good. Now when I plug in 6, this is 36 and this is 12. 36 minus 12 is 24. The top is 21. The bottom is 3. What is the average rate of change, if it's speed or if it's something else, for this particular function? 7. Now, always the average rate of change, in this case, it's abstract. We don't have measurement units. But if this is measured in miles and this is measured in hours, the measurement unit of this must be made out of two measurement units, miles per hour. Miles coming from the top, hours coming from the bottom. I cannot say it's 7 miles. It has to be miles per hour. Any questions for me? So the only section that is left before we before